Hello and welcome. I hope you're safe and well. Today's exciting episode is a sewing vlog because I spent all week doing a Storytime audiobook sort of episode, and then I had no time or energy to make a jacket.
It's perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Perfect jacket.
Oh, I forgot it was in the main titles. Well, here it is again, a nice long lingering look at this jacket. I had it out because I've got some leftover beads of these massive gemstone-y shaped ones. A lot of them are plastic, like the hearts are plastic, the blue emerald cut ones are plastic. And yeah, there's an emerald in the book that I just read, so maybe that's what made me think of it. Anyway, I've got some leftover beads and I was thinking of doing a triangle on the back. So yeah, and I still haven't done the lining for this. So maybe I'm just procrastinating because I think I've got about 20 jackets now that I need to put the silk lining in. And also, I got out all these fabrics again to film them because I was going to put that over the top of the storybook that I read. But and plus, I mean, it's just beautiful to look at all the fabrics up close and see all the details. But it made each file too big, so I couldn't do it. So now I have all this mess to clean up on my desk. It's a massive mound before I can make a jacket out of the grey daisy fabric. This is a 2 yards. I'm going to make that pretty white dress the McCall's dress. Simple one. I'm going to make that out of this pale grey fabric, and that's going to be the dress with the grey daisy jacket, and that's going to be my version of the outfit that she wears at the end. But I'm also planning to make at least one more layer cake dress this month. Well, this is a layer cake skirt, but yeah, I want to make an actual layer cake dress as well. This one is adorable. I still have some of this maroon and orange and white fabric left, so I got out these. It's kind of like KonMariing my dressmaking fabrics. So this is the one that this is the one I wanted to make next. It's orange and pink, and they're just so bright and cheerful. I absolutely love it. And yeah, so I've sort of lined it up in the order that they'll be sewn together. But obviously the plaid one, I've got quite a lot of that. So that'll be at different points as well as the pink. And I think it's just so bright and adorable and infectious. I love it. But then I've rearranged my other fabrics as well. These ones, I think the red one with the rose hips was originally going to be in the red dress, but obviously I ended up making it the sushi dress instead, and it's dark red and pink. So I think these ones look good together. I originally had the moth one with the different sort of turquoise colours and teal colours, but I think those four will be really interesting together. I tried the Very Hungry Caterpillar one because I'm just determined to fit that in with something. And it has that rusty red colour in it. So I thought maybe, but I don't like the way the sort of sage green one, the bottom one, and the white, I don't think they look good together. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll try it with something else. This one, I originally had the top one in a purple one, and I originally had the lobster one in a blue and orange combination, and these ones were all in two different navy ones. But now I've sort of taken them out again and I'm going to put them all together. I don't know why, but I really, really like these together. It's just so weird and quirky and unusual. It's not without trying too hard. They just seem like they sort of, I don't know. You know, like a secondhand bookstore where they don't try to make everything look good and they don't try to make everything clash. That's the way they happen to look. And I love that eclectic look without, being too forced. There's something very organic about it. Oh, and this is me reminding myself about the ladybug fabric. I think I will make 2 jackets. I'm trying to decide whether to make just a dress and 1 jacket or 2 jackets. And I think I want to do 2 because I know exactly what I want to do with one, but the other one I think I'll experiment with. And this is my brown one. So I've got these two fabrics, I've got 2 yards of them, and this crafting one here, I've also got 2 yards of the brown one with the white and pink. And then these 3 top ones, I've only got a yard of each of those, or 1 meter. And yeah, but I think they're going to be really interesting together. I'm not sure yet whether this is going to be a dress or a skirt. I think it's going to be a dress just because there's so much in there. But yeah, I think it's going to be a dress because that top fabric with the William Morris style print, the symmetrical one, I think that will be on the bodice. And again, I'll probably use the McCall's one or maybe the Butterick 66677. They're basically the same pullover dresses. And this is the other leftover fabric I have. I'm not sure. I don't know that it's brown enough to go in that one, but we'll see. I think it's more brown than any of the other ones. It's weird, this colour. It's sort of a maroony dark red. It sort of goes with almost all of them. So I guess I'll just make them and then see which one needs a little bit more fabric, like needs an extra layer in it. If I do the top 2 layers, there's enough to do 2, but if I do the bottom layer, there's only enough to do 1. So yeah, I'll just sort of, I don't know, we'll just see. The green, it kind of looks good with the green one. No, yeah, I don't know. I won't make a firm decision. Originally, some of these fabrics were in one navy blue dress, layer cake dress, and the other fabrics were in another navy layer cake dress, and I've mushed them together. So they're all going to be one, I think, and some of the other fabrics I've kept aside for just a plain navy blue dress, and some I think I might use for mock-ups of jackets. This one is beige and mauve. And again, I had these in different dresses and I felt the other dresses that they were in felt a little bit forced. They were going to be in a sort of pastel one. And I don't know, I just didn't like it as much. And then I sort of played around with the fabrics. I just like playing around with the different fabrics and finding different combinations. And this one is just really relaxing and calming and harmonious. I love it. This one, on the other hand, is very bright. All of these ones are leftover fabrics. Start of the year, I made a dress with 3 of these fabrics. A couple of them I used half of it to make a reversible jacket. And so I've got some leftover. And the Hungry Little Caterpillar fabric is from last year, I think. Yes, last year I made this kids' party layer cake dress. It's adorable, but I only ended up using half the fabric. So I'm going to mush this and this yellow one, wisteria yellow one. I have some of this left over from when I made the 2 yellow dresses. Yeah, used it in the bodice of that one. I also have some beige fat quarters, but I don't think they suit this. I think they will look better in the mauve and beige one. And then with this one, I'll just keep it in bright sunshiny yellow. There are some other sort of beige-ish fabrics in there as well. But I think if I do 1 or 2 layers of scraps, like a patchwork layer in there as well, they'll just be bright colours, not any of the beige ones. So I think, yeah, I'm really happy with that colour combination. It's kind of a little bit of a balance, but when you see it from far away, it looks really, really bright and happy. And I love that. It's so cute. Who doesn't want a ray of sunshine in their life? And this one, oh my gosh, these massive psychedelic blooms with these tiny little love potion bottles. It's hilarious. So that's obviously a Halloween fabric. And then the 1960s psychedelic massive blooms one mixed with the berry coloured fabric. Because if you look at the potion bottles up close, there's a lot of black in there, and also the psychedelic flowers. They have black around the outside. And yeah, so I know from far away the berry and the purple layers might not make sense, but once you get close, they've all got all the drawings, like all the illustrations have these thick black lines around them. So I think the darker layers sort of tie in really well, in my opinion, and I will be the one wearing it. So I think they look good together. And yeah, and they're all really different. I love how different each of these ones are. So yeah, I'm really happy with these combinations. They're, I think because the sushi dress is so, like, it's got pinks and dark red in there, instead of having each dress just be one color, I've sort of made it oh, that one's going to be so cute. I like the Very Hungry Caterpillar fabric in that one. It looks good. I wasn't sure whether I was going to find the right home for it, but I think that looks, I'm happy with that. So, and these fabrics here are ones, they're just going to be one dress out of each bit of fabric. I was thinking about how plain her pale grey outfit is at the end, and if I'd been the costume designer for her, I probably would have made her more wear vintage clothing, like have a collection of vintage clothes and wear pieces like this, like still really simple dresses. You know how Anna Wintour always wears a Chanel suit in winter or a summer dress in summer, and it's essentially the same dress all the time but in different prints. Yeah, I would probably just get loads of different vintage look prints and in natural fibre, so linen cotton blend or just cotton, and I would do that. So anyway, I've finished playing with my fabrics now. I will pack them neatly away, but I'm really happy with these dresses. They're going to be adorable. And oh my gosh, this is seriously such a massive amount of fabrics. Oh, and I also have this other fabric. It's a quilting cotton, 2 yards, and I guess if I want to make the skirt extra big in one of these layer cake dresses, I'll add it to that. I don't know. Or I can just make a standalone dress for Halloween. Anyway, so the grey daisy jacket and the light grey dress are probably the next ones that you'll see. But before I can do that, I really do have to clean up this mess on my workbench. The amount of mess I managed to make is impressive, to say the least. Oh, and the Snow White jacket that I was making, unfortunately, I think I'm going to have to pull it apart because it's just, I don't know, it's just not what I want it to be. Like, I love those, the frosted glass ones. I think I'll keep. I have about a half of what I need in the frosted. So what I think I'm going to do is take them all off, start again. I love these blue glass beads, but they're too dark. And I love the flowers, but they're too small. And I love the mermaid pearl ones. They're hilarious, but they do not go well because they're plastic and they're just the wrong color and they're the wrong, I don't know, they just play with the light the wrong way. So I'm going to take them all off and I'm just going to use clear glass or clear plastic beads for half, and I'm going to use the frosted ones for the other half. That way I'll have enough beads, but it'll have the brightness and the clearness, and it won't have the grayness that it has with those blue-grey beads. It's just, I mean, I like it, but I've just got this really, really clear image of what I want in my mind, and that is not it, sadly. So I will be pulling it apart and doing it all again. I'm going to get so good at beading with all this redoing. Anyway, I've still got the cactus flowers jacket to finish, the butterfly one to finish, and the cactus one to finish as well. And I haven't even started beading the dinosaur one. That one's going to be fun. That one's going to be so much fun. A lot of her outfits kind of look like the outfit she wears at the end. I guess there's not a whole lot of character progression for her character. Maybe that's what they're saying with the sameness of the outfits. Anyway, I have to go fold all these fabrics and put them away, and then make the light grey jacket and the light grey dress, which are going to be adorable. And I will leave you with a sample chapter of Witch Witch, the Storytime book that I just did. After I'd recorded all the footage, like I did every single night for a week, I did like 2 or 3 chapters. And then once they were all done, I was like, oh, okay, I've got time. I'll record loads of, bits of footage of all the different fabrics and some jackets and some dresses and things like that, and I'll put them all together so you have something to look at while you're listening. And I did one sample chapter, and yeah, the file was too big, so I couldn't do it to all of it. But I do have chapter 17, so I'll tack that on the end of here. And if you want, you can watch and listen. If you don't want to listen to the rest of the story by listening to chapter 17 when you haven't listened to the first 16 chapters, you can just mute it and look at the lovely fabrics. So that's it for this episode, apart from the chapter. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you've been inspired to drag out your fabric stash and mix and match and clash all your lovely fabrics. Thanks again for watching, and happy sewing. And stick around if you want to look at and listen to that chapter 17 of the book. It really is an adorable story. Chapter 17. Belladonna woke in a four-poster bed in a room at the very top of the North Tower in Darkington Hall. Mr. Ledbetter and the ogre had carried her there after the end of the competition, while Terence hopped around her, worrying about her and congratulating her at the same time. Belladonna couldn't remember much about it now, only that she'd been anxious about the baby rabbits and about not having a toothbrush, and that Terence had said he'd go down to the campsite and see to everything. How long ago had that been, she wondered. It still seemed to be dark, but now she felt refreshed and very happy. She'd done it. She'd won. She was to be the bride of Ahriman, to be with him always, to stroke his moustache and massage his ankles if they swelled, and share his secrets and his hopes and his fears. Oh, glory, said Belladonna, and smiling fell asleep once more. But a happy white witch blissfully in love, can be a disaster. While Belladonna slept, the room began to fill with exquisite saucer-sized snowflakes, each a perfect six-pointed star, and the flakes did not melt but alighted softly on the hangings of the bed. The embroidered rug, the washstand, an enamel music box burst from the chest of drawers and began to play a dreamy Viennese waltz. Strings of gold and silver tinsel draped themselves across the ceiling, and the windowsills filled with rows of crystal goblets brimful of knickerbocker glories. A knickerbocker glory is like a trifle, an English dessert. But Belladonna, knowing nothing of this, slept on. While Belladonna lay dreaming in the tower, Ahriman sat in the library talking to Sir Simon Montpellier. Ahriman had suggested that the knight might like to slip into something more comfortable than the breastplate and leg armour that he had worn for 400 years, and though he murmured something about his underclothes not quite being the thing, the wife-slave was now wearing Ahriman's second-best dressing gown, a maroon one appliqued with fiends and pitchforks, and was telling the magician the story of his life. So, the Lady Anne was the first of your wives, inquired Ahriman, pushing the whisky decanter to his friend. Even so, agreed Sir Simon. She was the one I drowned. The cock crowed thrice. I drowned her. I had to. She made it the bedchambers rumble, as if cleft in twain. Ah, she snored, you mean, said Ahriman. Very distressing, that. Nothing worse. The knight nodded and pashed a little. Then I wedded the Lady Mary. She I took by the throat and fastened my foul fingers around. Strangulation, Ahriman nodded. She hath cheated me of my victuals. Fiddled the housekeeping, did she? In that case, she deserved everything she got. And the next one? Next I espoused the fair Olivia. She I walled up in the privy for looking with favour upon the knave who emptied of her slops. Ahriman shook his head. Terrible, terrible. What you've been through. Sir Simon went on telling the magician about Lady Julia, whom he'd stabbed in the buttery because she had a horrid little dog that yapped, and Lady Letitia, whom he'd thrown over a cliff because she guzzled, and he was just about to start on Lady Henrietta, whom he'd knocked off with a poisoned halibut because she drove him nutty, walking in her sleep, when there was a knock at the door and the ogre entered. The cracker's in his tureen waiting for you to say goodnight, sir. Well, that's adorable. And I've laid out your pyjamas. Is there anything else you require? No, Lester, that's fine. You can go to bed. I've put Sir Simon in the green room, said Lester, winking at Mr. Moon, on account of it being handy for the bathroom, like. Good, said the magician impatiently. There was still one more wife to go, and he wanted to hear about her. There was a postcard from the Wizard Watcher by the late post, sir, the ogre continued. It has reached Skegness and hopes to be back the day after tomorrow. Lester had gotten through to the magician at last. Now that is good news. I'm really glad about that. I wouldn't have liked it to miss the wedding. But the word wedding had a bad effect on Ahriman. His brooding face darkened and he drained his whiskey in a single desperate gulp. You've no idea what women do, Lester. Sir Simon's been telling me. They snore, they have little dogs, and they walk in their sleep. And those are just the ordinary women. I mean, this witch, she must be really very black to do necromancy. I should think a witch as black as that would have some pretty nasty habits. Not necessarily, sir, said Lester. And if she's blacker than me, I mean, I don't want to be henpecked. I can't imagine anything sillier than a henpecked wizard. Sir, said Lester, losing his patience, you haven't even seen Witch number 7 yet. And anyway, what about your duty to wizardry and darkness? What about the blighting black baby you're going to have? What, said Lester, did you even have the blinking contest for? The magician sighed. Yes, you're quite right, Lester. I'll go and see her first thing in the morning and fix the date. As Lester left the room, Ahriman was leaning forward eagerly and saying, And the last one? The Lady Beatrice, wasn't it? What did she do? Most vilely and horribly hath she smelled, Sir Simon said gloomily. And having come to the end of his wives, the knight poured himself another whisky and began again at the beginning. Ahriman kept to his word, and the next morning saw him climbing the curved steps towards Belladonna's tower. The magician wasn't feeling too good. Sir Simon had told him about his murdered wives, not once but 3 times, and though Ahriman understood how much the wife-slayer needed to talk after 400 years of only pashing, he did feel very tired. Nor were the ogre and the secretary following him close behind, exactly full of beans. They'd spent the night worrying in case the real Sir Simon burst clanking through the panelling and gave the game away. And they didn't really like the way Monty Moon had settled into his part. That was the trouble with actors. You could get them on stage, but getting them off again was another matter. Ledbetter, you wouldn't lie to me, said Ahriman, turning around. Is she covered in warts? I mean, covered? No, sir, not at all. What about her fingers and toes? All there, are they? No stumps, for example. Nothing webbed or anything. Nothing clawed. No, sir. The magician climbed a few more steps and turned again. And, nothing personal, you understand, because yours is charming, I mean. It's part of you. But it could be awkward in a wife. In short, Ledbetter, has she got a tail? You know, one of those fork jobs, a bit black and bushy. No, sir, said the secretary. Witch number 7 is tailless. And her name is Belladonna. That's right. Belladonna Canker. Oh, well. And he reached the top step. Ahriman paused, took a deep breath, and threw the door open. Belladonna was sitting up in bed. The sun, streaming through the east window, had turned her hair into a shower of gold. Her eyes were bright with happiness and blue as the summer sky, and she was singing a sweet and foolish little song, the kind with roses in it and springtime and love, rather a lot of love. Ahriman stood stock still in the doorway, unable to move. Who, he said, is this? That is Belladonna, sir, witch number 7, the winner of the contest. You're pulling my leg. No, sir, she's not, in an enchanted state. I mean, she hasn't taken on another shape just to bamboozle me. She looks like this all the time. All the time, sir. Belladonna, meanwhile, was gazing rapturously at Ahriman, her heart in her eyes. This was the closest she'd ever been to him, and she was drinking in the flared nostrils, the tufty ears, the curve of his noble nose. Belladonna, said the magician, stepping forward. His voice throbbed, his eyes burned, and his chest heaved like a pair of bellows. Ari, murmured Belladonna shyly from beneath lowered lashes. Ari, all my life I've wanted someone to call me Ari. Lester and Ledbetter exchanged glances. Things were turning out exactly how they'd hoped, but they hadn't reckoned on being quite so embarrassed. Ledbetter, we must be married at once. Tomorrow at the latest, said Ahriman, who was now sitting on Belladonna's bed and grasping both her hands. Mr. Ledbetter sighed. It was just like Ahriman to spend weeks grumbling about having to get married and then falling in love like a ton of bricks and making trouble for everyone. I'm afraid that's impossible, sir. There are wedding invitations to be sent, the food to be ordered, the bride's clothes to be bought. 3 weeks is the shortest I can manage. 3 weeks? I can't wait 3 weeks. Can you wait 3 weeks, my pretty? Oh, my God, muttered Lester. He had forgotten how absolutely ridiculous people sound when they're in love. But now at last the really peculiar look of the tower room had gotten through to Ahriman, and without letting go of Belladonna's hand, he looked with surprise at the exquisite snowflakes, the string of gold and silver tinsel, the shimmering moonstones now dripping from the mouth of the wash jug. Catching every movement of her beloved's eyes, Belladonna flushed and said, I'm sorry about all this. It happened while I was asleep. You see, Ari, I feel I should tell you that I used to be white. No, my treasure, said the magician dotingly. That's quite impossible. Your hair is so golden, your cheeks are so pink, and your eyes are such a lovely, lovely blue. I don't mean that, said Belladonna. I mean my magic was white. I was a white witch. She got through to Ari at last. A spasm crossed his face. My dearest love, you mustn't say such a thing. Oh, it's all right. I'm not white now. I'm very, very black. Well, you saw how black I was. Rover made me do it. She broke off with a little cry. Oh, how dreadful of me. How selfish and cruel. I left Rover in his matchbox all night. Oh, poor, poor Rover. He'll be so dry and sad. Terence will never forgive me. She had freed her hands from Ahriman and, jumping out of bed, ran to the chair where her gown was lying. Here it comes, whispered the ogre. Belladonna had found the matchbox, had opened it, and was staring at it while the colour drained from her face. When she spoke, it was in a voice so full of anguish and disbelief that they hardly recognised it. Rover's gone, said Belladonna. He's gone. There was a long and dreadful pause. I have to find him, Ari. I have to. He's my familiar, you see. Without him, I'm nothing. She began to search desperately, lifting up the knickerbocker glories, pushing aside the snowflakes. Ahriman had started to help her when he saw the ogre beckoning to him from the other side of the room. Sir, said Lester, when he got his master to the other side of the door, it's my belief that it ain't no good looking because the worm ain't lost. He's been stolen. I've thought it all along, but Belladonna's only just noticed that he's gone, said Ahriman, looking puzzled. Lester saw he'd made a mistake. If he told Ahriman that Rover had been gone before they raised Sir Simon, he'd get suspicious at once. Belladonna had made it clear that her blackness came from Rover. So if there was no Rover, there was no blackness. And that led right back to Sir Simon not being Sir Simon at all, but an actor named Monty Moon. I can't go into that right now, sir, he said, but I can tell you one thing. Rover may be a good performer, but he's not up to shutting a matchbox after he's crawled out of it. No, that worm's been nicked, and I'll bet my bottom dollar I know who did it. Who? Witch number 6, that Madame Olympia. Ledbetter thinks the same. Oh, no, surely not. Ahriman was very shocked. The one with the interesting cruel smile and the, rats. Lester nodded. And if I'm right, we ought to be getting down there, down to her caravan quick. The witches are all due to go back tomorrow. Ahriman was frowning. The more he remembered the Symphony of Death, the more he thought it would be better to not meet the enchantress head on. I think we had better take her by surprise, he said, and that means disguises. How would you like to be a rabbit, Lester? Not at all, sir. Oh, come on, be a sport. No, sir. Absolutely and definitely no. While Ahriman and the ogre were talking, Madame Olympia was packing her things. Since Belladonna had won the competition, the enchantress had been in such a towering rage that she had made 3 holes in the floor of the caravan where she had stamped her feet. She had also come out in a rash from sheer temper, and it was this that made her decide to go back to London immediately, to her beauty parlour where she could mix more creams and ointments to get rid of it. Then her plan was to come back like the Queen in Snow White with a poisoned apple or some poisoned stays which she could sell to Belladonna at the door and which would kill her, except that probably Belladonna did not wear stays. People did not seem to nowadays, so she would have to think of something else. So now she came out of the caravan to do one last job, and that was to throw some rubbish she did not want into the fire, some nasty, useless, disappointing rubbish that she wanted to get rid of once and for all. And as she did so, a rabbit and a fox ran between her legs and bounded into the caravan. If she had bothered to look, she would have noticed that the fox was an unusually handsome one with a great bushy autumn-coloured tail, and that the rabbit, which looked crossed, had only a single eye. But she only turned around furiously and said, "Get out at once, you dirty animals, shoo!" But of course they weren't dirty animals anymore. Sitting at the table were Ahriman the Awful and the ogre. "Good morning," said Ahriman, polite as always. "How dare you?" screamed the enchantress. "How dare you break in like this?" Ahriman looked at her. The enchantress's power is useless on someone who is truly in love. Ahriman could now see her for who she really was, and he did not like what he saw. "We believe you have something that belongs to my fiancée," said the magician. "Her familiar, to be exact." "Her familiar? What on earth are you talking about? I have a perfectly good familiar of my own, as you can see." Madame Olympia kicked the cowering aardvark with the heel of her shoe. Gosh, she's horrible. Then she shut her eyes and began to gabble something under her breath. But before she could get any further, Lester, following a signal from his master, had taken a full jug of milk and upended it over the enchantress's head. "Phew!" sputtered Madame Olympia. "Goggle!" Milk is a well-known antidote to magic, almost as good as eating roses or holding a rowan twig. "Quick, search the caravan," ordered Ahriman, while the enchantress, groping for a towel, used some words that even Lester had not heard before. So they searched the caravan, turning out the built-in cupboards, opening Madame Olympia's half-packed suitcase, feeling under the bed. Nothing, not a sign of Robert. "You see," jeered the enchantress. "Turn the caravan inside out for all I care." She flung herself out of the caravan and, picking up a small bundle of rubbish, walked with a gleeful smile towards the fire. It was Ahriman who caught on first and ran after her, the ogre following. "Stop, stop! Let's see what you're burning." "Never!" shouted the enchantress and laughed. Then she brought her arm over in an arc and threw her bundle into the flames. Ahriman did not stop for any spells that would have made him fireproof or any magic words that would have doused the flames. Instead, he plunged his arm into the red-hot blaze and drew the crumpling bundle just as it had begun to catch, and there, dry and bewildered looking, at the bottom of the cornflakes packet was Rover. Belladonna, sitting wistfully in a chair in the tower room, greeted the earthworm with a shriek of joy. But then she saw the magician's hand. "Oh, Ari, you're hurt. That's dreadful." And she took his hand and bent over it and began to croon one of her wholeness songs about the beauty of new skin and the cleverness of having 5 fingers. And almost at once the pain disappeared and blisters were gone. "My angel, my little blossom, you've healed me," said Ahriman, growing more and more besotted. "Yes, but that was the old me," said Belladonna, aka Rapunzel, hastily. "The new me is quite different, Ari. If you give me Rover, I'll show you." The ogre handed her the worm, which he damped down and fettled up with some moist earth as they came. "What would you like, Ari?" she said. "Shall I turn the tinsel into some mouldering thigh-bones, perhaps? Sort of a criss-cross pattern? And what about making the snowflakes into gaping wombs? You do like gaping wombs. I adore them, my angel. They're almost my favourite thing." So Belladonna closed her eyes while the ogre and Mr. Ledbetter and Ahriman stood and watched. The next half hour was one that none of them ever forgot. Belladonna worked and she worked and she worked, not once letting the strain and puzzlement show on her face, but at the end of the time she put down Rover and threw herself with a wail of anguish onto the bed. "It's hopeless," she cried, quite hopeless. "You must forget me, Ari. You must wed another. My blackness is absolutely and completely gone." The others looked around the room once more. The string of gold and silver tinsel was still there, but between them now sparkled chains of the most delightful fairy dolls. In the centre of each exquisite, still unmelted snowflake shone a diadem of flawless pearls, but it was the pots of pink and rather bobbly flowers which had sprung up all over the place that made Leicester's voice, when he spoke, sound like the voice from a tomb. "Begonias," said the ogre, shaking his giant head. "Blooming begonias." It was in this moment of complete despair that Ahriman showed himself a most true and noble lover. "My angel," he said, gathering Belladonna in his arms, "what does it matter? You can fill the whole place with knickerbocker glories and those, pink bobby things, and it wouldn't bother me at all. All I care about is you." But though she let her head rest for a moment on his manly shoulders, Belladonna was firm. "No, Ari, you have a duty. Remember what the competition was about? Darkness is all, you said. Suppose we had..." Her voice broke, but she pulled herself together. "Suppose we had a white baby, or even a grey one. What would a baby like that do to a devilish maze and a fiendish laboratory and all the other lovely things you've worked so hard to make? How could a white baby keep wizardry and darkness alive in the land? You don't just belong to yourself, Ari. You belong to all the doom and dastardly and devilment in the world, and I'd never forgive myself if I let you forget what was right." And nothing that the desperate wizard could say would shake her. "I'll go as soon as I can get my things together," she said, keeping her voice steady with effort. "If I'm so white that I can ruin a powerful familiar like that, the further away I am, the better. Only I must say goodbye to Terence and give Rover back to him." She turned to Mr. Ledbetter and the ogre, who was standing miserably by the door. "By the way, where is Terence? I haven't seen him for ages." The ogre frowned. "He wasn't at the campsite," he said. "Are you sure?" said Mr. Ledbetter sharply. "He said he was going down to the campsite to get Belladonna's things and help the witches clear up. I was sure he'd spent the night down there. You know what boys are like with tents." And, their great sorrow laid aside for the moment, they all looked at each other with a new anxiety. Where was Terence? End of chapter 17. And it's also the end of the episode. So thanks again for watching and listening, and happy sewing!